Hello everyone, welcome to another one of our online tools tutorials. Tonight we're going to be talking about what's new in our tools. My name is Ann Cunias. I'll be acting as the host, watching your questions this evening. Our main presenter is Susie Artsberger, and Susie is our Information Technology Director at the home office at BetterInvesting, and she also wears the very important hat of the product manager for these wonderful online tools. So she knows them inside and out. She knows what's new. She drives what's new. So Susie, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ann. That was very kind. And I'll thank everyone who took time out of their busy schedule tonight, including the March Madness kickoff games, to be with us tonight. So without further ado, let's get started. We will be looking at some tickers tonight in the context of examples only. You won't even see a full stock selection guide or stock study, but whatever we show you, don't take it as a recommendation to buy, and do your own research. So in tonight's session, what we're going to do is an overview of some of our newest features. There's one or two examples where I reference one rev back, just because we feel it important to show you. Stock Comparison Guide has some new features. The CoreSSG and SSGPlus together share many of these new features. And then what we're going to do for the last part of our program, once we're done with truly new features, is go into frequently asked questions. And in this part of the program, I will go over, or I have a list of things that people ask us, but this is where feel free to ask anything that you might have about these online tools. The session is being recorded, so if you have to leave, you will get a recording, a link to the recording in your email. I just want to remind everyone that we have CoreSSG and SSGPlus we're talking about. They're essentially running off of the same platform, but they have a different view. One is step-by-step. SSGPlus is a two-page quicker workflow. SSGPlus generally has more features, more reports, a little bit extra data, and more screening, but there is a price difference commensurate with those changes. But remember, same SSG methodology, same results, same data goes in, same study is stored in the background. It's really just a view and feature difference in the foreground. And one of the cool things that, because this is an online program, we get to do these continuous releases. If you're using other online programs, or even now we see it in cars, sometimes they're called over-the-air releases, or cell phones have these where they just appear. And so we're going to talk a little bit tonight about how you get notified, and this webinar is one of them. We do minor bug fix releases constantly as they come up, and then we tend to accumulate other releases or notify you of new features once or twice a year. So one of our first things that we have going here are updates to our stock comparison guide. And what you can now do is share that SSG or stock comparison guide online. So let's say you've made a comparison guide and you want to send it to your fellow club members because you might have done an industry study or something like this. We now have a button here where you can share it in the top menu. And when you do that, it will bring up the same kind of share box that you would see for an individual study. It will bring up a box that says, tell me who to send this to. And at this point, you're going to select your recipients, which will bring up another page where you can kind of manage your address book and recipients. If you want to add contacts, you'll click up here, you'll enter your data and then click up here in the top row and click add. And then you select your contacts here on the left that you want your comparison to go to and press return. Once you do that, you'll come back to the share panel, with your recipients filled in here, you can put in a personal message if you'd like. You can leave it empty, and then simply click on the button to share it out. And once you do that, your work is done. On the other end, the person, your recipient, receives an email that looks something like this. And it says they've shared a Better Investing study or comparison, and all you have to do is click here to create a copy of this in your own account. So it will create that copy of the SCG together with the related studies in the account. So let's say I'm the recipient of this email and I click on that. I log into my account if I need to, if I'm already logged in. My comparison guide will show up automatically, and I will have this new saved stock comparison guide, or SCG. I will also have any of the 1 to 5, there can be from 1 to 5 studies saved into my account that support that comparison guide. And then what we'll see in my account is, here's my SSG account that we need to have those supporting SSG studies, and they will show up right here. I'm going to turn my cursor on so it's always visible. So they show up right here. So there were those 4 that were there. I'm going to answer a question that came in right here, and it says the program asks you to share the comparison guide first. And that is a true statement. When we go to share our, let me back up here. When we go to share our comparison guide, we want to make sure we've already saved it in our own account. And then you can share it out to them. Another question that's coming in is, can you send a stock comparison guide to members using Toolkit? No, this is only for online. Toolkit doesn't do saved comparison. So the saving of a comparison like you see here, where if you call it back up again, you get the exact same studies, that concept doesn't exist in Toolkit. So this is, as the email says, is only for people who have the online tools there. If you want to get your Toolkit, or your club members who use Toolkit, if you want them to get them the data, what you're going to need to do is go into the stock selection guide and share out the individual studies in the form of an ITK file. They will import them and create a comparison guide. But again, in Toolkit, there's no way to save a comparison guide, so you can come back to it later. You always have to recreate it and reset up the highlighting, if you will. Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions about the comparison guide study at this point, or comparison guide sharing, but if you think of a question, please write it in. And we'll move on to some other updates that we have. In the data management area, so the tools come with data automatically entered into them. We get our data from Morningstar, and we download it every morning, and then that day's data is available to you. So generally, the biggest volume of changes are around price changes, but if the company has changed data or they report new data, that comes in. We get it downloaded to us on a daily basis. So once it's in your study, you can change it. And we'll show you some slides about that, and we may end up returning to this topic. But what we've added here are the ability to modify any quarter of data that we have. So we have the ability to redistribute and include in our tools 40 quarters of data. And previously we were only showing you about 8 of those. So now you can see everything we have just by paging across. So there's about 40 quarters. Sometimes there's a little bit more because we got to make sure we got 10 full years, and then we might tack on an extra year, and they let us do that, no problem. And then we've added this pagination feature at the bottom. So you just click either the forward or back arrows or any one of these pages to move back and forth within that full set of data. Now, you'd only be here in this quarterly data panel if you are interested in changing the data. Because remember, and this is available in Core or Plus, but in Plus you have a quarterly data view where you can see all of this stuff in a graph. That's if you just want to look at it. If you need to change anything or modify anything, that's what this panel is for. So some of the most common reasons that people want this function are sometimes people put in manual data, or they totally maintain their data and overwrite everything that's in there. And that's doable, but they actually want to go beyond those 8 quarters. So they want to see all of them. And so we give them that ability. Sometimes you want to modify a single quarter of data for whatever reason that's a couple of years back. Whoops. And so you can see it on the quarterly data page in the SSGPlus. So that's a new function. And while we're here talking about data, let's go back to you can modify data. You can add another year, you can add another quarter, and how you do that is you get to the data tab, the data menu option, and you can pick annual or quarterly, and then you click on the last row to add another year in the case of annual data. You click on the last row to add another quarter in the case of quarterly data. Works the same in Core or Plus. There's no feature difference between these two. We get this question because, and Anne can probably speak to this, and we may end up speaking about it when we go live later, with the tax law changes and the repatriation of revenue from companies with foreign sales, there was for some companies, a one-time change where they got a one-time hit to earnings, they've got a one-time hit to their tax rate, and so some people want to modify that, and we get questions. How do I do that? So this is the place that you do it, again, in the data menu option, and you pick annual or quarterly, and you can just simply click into a cell and change it. Or if you want to add another row, just click into the bottom row and it will add the next one automatically. Okay, now when you do that, I want to point out that there's a data status column. So generally you'll see F's for final in here or P's for preliminary. If a company has preliminary data, like off of a press release, this will say P. If you modify that data, I'm going to go back and show you. If you modify that data, there's a U here that indicates it's a user modified data. So 3 states, F, P, or U. If you forget what that stands for, there's a little indicator at the bottom, a little explanatory note. And generally, you're going to find Fs and Ps. Ps, preliminary data, are also noted in the SSGPlus display with a little P next to it. So you get a little clue there that that's preliminary data. Now, if you modify some data, you're going to see a checkbox next to it that will by default be checked. And that will lock the data for you. So locking your data means in that row, if you go to update it again, it won't get touched. So if you're just doing a temporary modification or a temporary update, remember that's what that U stands for, you can uncheck it. Generally, you know, I do it both ways. Like I'll put in quarterly data or annual data as soon as it comes out, and I leave it unchecked so that the next time I update it, it'll get updated with the official data. But sometimes I'm making a modification that I want to be permanent. So let's say I have a company that had a one-time hit to earnings and net income. I might change earnings, I might change pre-tax profit, I might change net income and tax rate, and I want them to stick. I don't want them to be updated. I will make sure that row is locked. So that's what that lock checkboxes in the annual data, and there's one in quarterly data. Works the same way. And then when you update your data, it will respect the locked data flag. If you want it to update regardless, there's a way to force it to do that. Generally, people don't change this. But you can. So you can say, I don't care what it says, I want to update all my data. Okay, that's our data management features. Here are some things that are applicable to both Core and Plus that have to deal with the stock study itself or management of studies. So this is all about study management, yeah. One of the features that we added is the ability to update all the studies in your account. This is for the person who has many studies and doesn't want to do them individually, but also doesn't mind that all of the data is updated. So for example, Ann and I really, we have old data that we want to keep old because we use it for testing and demonstration. So we're not going to do this, but we have many, many users who say, I want to update everything in my account. And how you do that is you go to the My Studies tab. That's the one that looks like a file folder. So you'll end up with this display. It's similar between Core and Plus. Don't worry that it's just for Plus. It's not. This is for both. And you're going to open the Portfolios panel. So even if you have never set up a portfolio, you will actually have two predefined quote-unquote portfolios. One that says all studies and one that says studies not in a portfolio. That's what we're looking for. And we're going to click on that all studies row and then look for that icon that looks like a couple of circular arrows. And when you mouse over it, as my little pretend hand here does, it will say refresh all studies. This is the exact same icon that you might click to refresh your portfolio or to refresh an individual study. So again, it's just in the all studies row and it's going to say refresh all studies there.
Susie, I have a question
Yes.
about that because
Sure.
frankly, I haven't used a test account to test it, and I'm not going to use it on my account. Do you get like a warning or another box that opens that says, yes, I really want to do this?
No.
It just does
No,
it?
Right.
Okay, glad I didn't click it. Okay, I just wanted to
Here's
clarify.
what you see. I will show you. Here's what you're going to see. Yeah, no, there is actually
Oh,
do you want to update data and prices or prices only?
okay, so you could X out of that or hit cancel,
Yes,
and you could
exactly.
actually get out. Okay.
Right, but once you start the process, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see an indicator of how far along you are. If you have more than, I think, 50 or 100 studies, you're going to get a warning that says this might take a while. My 41 studies here probably took 20 seconds, 30 seconds. It's really quick. However, in my other test account, I think I had about 500, and it took about 2 minutes. So with a long-running process like that, we also provide a warning that says, hey, if it gets interrupted in the middle, hit the button again. In the background, what's happening is that it's pulling data in for every ticker in your account. And so it has to create a bunch of data. And if you have to run it a second time, the data is already there in our source database, and it's much quicker. When you're done, there is a success, or there will be a failure message if it gets interrupted for some reason. Actually, we put that warning out there. I've never actually seen it fail in that, so it's pretty robust. And again, you can update prices only if you want. So here's a question that we have. when updating all studies, do the study names change to reflect the new date when they were updated? No, they do not. A study name is a study name is a study name. When we go live, I'll show you. There is a date created and a date modified column. The date modified column will get updated, but the study name, that's generally in this column. I know it says portfolio name there, but the study name that's in that column does not get updated. And in many cases, like for my club portfolio, I no longer put a date because it's an evergreen thing. You know, it's like I follow IPGP, it's IPGP and my club name. And I don't even put a date on it anymore because I have other date fields I can work with.
Related is the question just above that, and I know you addressed it, but Bonnie's asking if you can select just the stocks that you want to update.
No, you
well, not
can.
From that button, but other.
Not from this button. All right, I'm just gonna go live here. Okay, we'll wait for this to catch up for everybody and make sure the audience can see it. So this is my study panel, and here's that portfolio bar, and here's the all studies, refresh all studies. If I want to update selected ones, I'm going to have to click them independently, one at a time. If you have big chunks of studies that you want to update together, I'm going to always recommend that you group them together in a portfolio. So let's say here's our club portfolio, and I can update these all at one time. So actually it's an interesting feature request because you can delete more than one and then delete the selected. Maybe we could update more than one through the same kind of mechanism, but it does not exist now. So your update options again are update all studies, update just the studies in a portfolio, or update them singly. Here's a great question. In updating studies, does it change to a new ticker? We're going to get there. And we do have an automatic update of ticker built in. So let's get back to our PowerPoint. And again, if you think of another question, please write it in.
Yeah, and I'm just going to address those people that have written in. We're not getting directly to your question, but we will. So be patient because some of them have been hanging out there for a while.
Right. Okay. So these are the screens that you see, and then you get a success, and they are all updated. Okay. Does updating my study change it to a new ticker? You know what? Yes and no. What's going to happen for any study in your account that is a simple ticker change? It's going to happen automatically. So for example, Priceline changed from Priceline to Booking. I didn't have to do a darn thing. The next time we opened the account, there it is. The ticker has been updated and the company name has been updated. So let's say the company actually does a name change, but no ticker change. The new name will appear in the company column. This does not change the study name. So you can see there's a disparity here. So the study name is just any set of text that you want to put there. By default, it comes in with ticker and date. It could be anything. Now you can always overwrite that with anything. These fields, ticker and company, they're very specific to the stock issue for which we're reporting data. So you need all of that to be correct so that all the rest of the processes work. So they get updated automatically. I hope that makes some sense. So yeah, that's where Booking got changed from Priceline to Booking. I actually just demonstrated this live. This was a feature that was one rev old, but for those of us who've been working in the tools for a while, we might have a whole bunch of studies. And you might want to delete them. Now you can always hit the trash can icon, but here you can move through and select multiples and click on delete selected. So that's a way to bulk delete from our saved studies. Okay, we're going to move on and to actual new features and updates that we have in the stock selection guide itself. This one is subtle, but subtle and interesting. We're showing negative analyst estimates. Previously, we did not, and there's a couple of reasons for that. In the context of sometimes negative analyst estimates are hard to process, sometimes analysts don't like making negative estimates. So what we were doing was previously just blanking them out and letting you do your own research. We're showing them because they're actually out here in this graph and they were confusing. So there wasn't a compelling long-term reason to not show them. So if your company has negative analyst estimates, you will now see them. If our economy and these companies' growth should change towards the negative, I'm going to point this out. You need to pay attention to things like this. This is Ford, and if, yeah, growth isn't great, but it's generally up. When you have these negative estimates, please take that into account and do your own research. So it's I'll call it a red flag. Maybe that's a strong word, but get in there, do your own research. And the reason is, be careful. The stock selection guide is meant for quality growth companies. If you have a company that is divesting operations or has negative growth estimates, it's really difficult to do a stock selection guide. I've answered many, many questions, and Anne has also, about how do I do an SSG on General Electric? You can't. It's no longer suitable for stock selection guide analysis because you're not assuming that growth is going to, or that earnings growth is going to drive price growth. So, Anne, do you have any anything to add to that about negatively growing companies, contracting companies in the stock selection guide?
I think you said it very nicely. Yeah, just don't. I mean, if you want to buy it, recognize it as a speculative play at this point. If you think it's undervalued, but it's not suitable for an SSG. The SSG works with high quality growth companies. And if you don't have that, use another method.
Done. Right. Okay. The negative estimate is shown on the chart if you're unfamiliar with the chart. So it looks pretty much the same in Core Plus if you only show sales, for example. You can mouse over this analyst estimates line and see what the growth rate is, or the analyst estimates for the future value here. So both the words and the graph are available to you on that. So if the economy turns, pay attention to this as another reference point. Core, this is the view in Core. And Core still has analyst estimates just like Plus did. This is where the Core panel is. There's the sales estimate is discussed in the sales tab, and then the earnings tab shows the earnings estimate. Okay. Now this is an SSG Plus only update or feature improvement. And this suggestion came about from a gentleman who looked at a graph like this and said, where are my PE outliers? Where is my PE dots? So he's in the SSG Plus, he's looking at his 10-year graph of PE values and realizes that some data is missing. Well, what happened is that about 3-4 years ago, he took that data as an outlier and excluded it. And as time went on, he kept updating that same study, and we got many more years. And when he looked at his data panel up at the top, it's only showing 5 years. It doesn't look like any outlier is there. If he had switched over to Core, he would have seen it. But it's confusing here because you don't see it, you don't know how to fix it. So what we did was we said, if you update that company again, those old PE outliers are going to get removed. And so your graph in those older 5 years is going to be restored. So this is mainly a feature for our more advanced users who kind of want to play with the data like that. And that's that. And then so you see those dots are back. Another feature that we've added, it goes along in SSGPlus only on this forecast earnings per share panel. So previously, one revision back, we talked to you about the growth trend panels where you could see sales growth trends for varying periods of time. We have now made some updates to the pre-tax profit and taxes panels here. We've added another set of data, and that is we've added quarter versus quarter growth rates. Previously, you only saw this trailing 12 months growth rate. So here's all your annual data for pre-tax profit margin. We see this company kind of at 8%, goes down to 1%, bumps its way back up, then it's about mid-10s, then starts heading back down. And the recent 3 quarters, it's heading down. It seems like at a pretty slow rate. Well, by adding the quarter over quarter, you see 2017 Q1 over 2016 Q1 and see, wow, it's about half of what was traditional, 5.6. And yeah, it's come up a little bit, but it's not 9, it's not 10. And so you get a little more insight. On the taxes side of the world, same thing. We had previously shown the trailing 12-month effective tax rate, and now we see each individual quarter. So 2017 was interesting in that the tax rate, effective tax rate, went down. 2018, it bumps up to something that seems more reasonable in light of this company's history, and then Q2 was large. So you're not going to realize how large. You see over here in 46.9% that it's bigger, but this shows you, you know, quarter over quarter, there was something going on in Q2 and probably worth a little bit of investigation. Generally the press release or the, certainly the 10Q is going to talk about what that's all about, because we're like real analysts and they're asking the same questions. What happened here? Okay. One of our, it's an update that I'm excited about. We've added an online tool specific email list. So in the past couple What's New in Tools webinars, we have asked our audiences, how would you like to be notified of updates? Traditionally, what we've done is these What's New in Tools webinars. But maybe you're the type that just wants to scan through it and be done. And people said, you know what, I want to be emailed. Well, we didn't want those emails getting in the mix of all of the other types of emails that we send. So we added an online tool specific email list. And the only thing we're going to use this for is updates and news regarding the Better Investing online tools. It's not going to be any more than 1 time per month. You're talking, Ann and I are going to be the ones who might have messaging here. So it's pretty localized and personal. And how you sign up for this, you are not automatically added to the list, by the way. This is a opt-in type of thing only. So you're going to sign up using the email preferences in your update profile on the website. I'll tell you tonight in the survey, if you want to tell me you want to opt in, great. Tell me and I will add you, but this is how generally it's going to work. And there is a new line for online tools, news and updates, and you're just going to check that box and click save, and that's all it takes. Okay, that actually reaches the end of our updates segment of the program. So we're a little more than halfway through. And let's go back to some of these questions. before we move on to some of our frequently asked questions that we hear at home office.
Okay, let's go backwards here because we just talked about it, and it's a question that always comes up. What is TTM?
Okay, you know what? Let me go live.
Yeah, go live.
Let's go live. What was that company we were looking at? Williams-Sonoma?
Yes, that was one of them. I don't know what the second one was that you were looking at there. I think they were two different companies.
All right, let me start a study on Williams-Sonoma and make sure everyone can see that. So this is Williams-Sonoma. These recently quarterly figures are, let me blow this up a little bit. This quarter compared to the similar quarter the year before. So 4 point whatever percent, 7.4-ish, 7-ish percent. If we go to the earnings per share panel, get to the point where that question came up, pre-tax profit margin. Yeah. We see quarter over quarter and TTM. TTM stands for trailing 12 months. It's a pretty common acronym in the investing world. And what it means is this, it's also synonymous with the sum of the trailing 4 quarters. So that's what that means. And so we add up the 4, it's like an annualized thing, but it's as recent as we can get, the sum of the trailing 4 quarters.
Right. Yeah, the difference is that TTM always groups together the most recent 4 quarters. So you're looking at 4 quarters versus the 4 quarters from 1 year ago. And the quarter is just looking at a single quarter and comparing that to the 1 quarter a year ago. So it's just a length. And the TTM will just be much smoother numbers, as you can even observe here. They're just...
Well, let's show the quarterly data.
Yeah, there you go.
We have a quarterly data display here, and this shows by default trailing 4 quarters, also known as TTM. So this company, let's get rid of the sales. So we're looking at earnings here. Now this is the one, Ann, with the...
That's the quarter over quarter, what you just...
This is quarter over quarter, bumpier. You know what, I'm going to bring up
pre-tax profit. Look at pre-tax profit on sale.
Oh.
And that is usually a good chart to look at. There you go.
Yes. So here's the individual quarter versus the previous quarter. And in this company, that first January ending quarter has pretty
most
high
profits. They're the most profitable in the Christmas quarter, always.
Right.
Although you see the trend of that is kind of declining.
Yeah, I know. Kind of draw that mental line here as it goes through the center. So if we wanted to smooth it out, there's the trailing 4 quarters. And the nice thing about this is that you can clearly see by smoothing it out the overall trend of that line. So, 2 different ways of looking at it, and they're subtle differences, and you would be chuckling if you had overheard the conversation between Ann and I advocating for one data point over another. And honestly, this change came about because we couldn't agree.
Right.
Like, all right, forget it. We're just going to show them both.
And it works out. It works great. I love it. Hey, one of our attendees is helping us with our nomenclature here. She's suggesting that we use the term rolling quarters for those TTM. Think of those as rolling quarters as opposed to the static 4 quarters, which is what we're seeing in that annual data above that dotted line, if that makes sense. So those TTM, those are the rolling quarters. So in the first quarter, it's taking the first, fourth, third, and second from the previous year, adding that up. So maybe that helps.
That's good.
Thank you, Faith, for that suggestion.
Yes. All right.
More questions?
What else do we have?
Yeah, we'll go back to the top because they've been waiting the longest. And this is an often, and it's actually on our FAQ.
It is on our
invalid. Yeah, he says that he often gets an invalid message near the end of the SSG, especially using SSGPlus. I do not always know why. So why?
And you're the pro at this question, and I'm going to try and force it.
Okay.
We have some, yeah, I think
Well,
Microsoft is going to be pretty easy, right? So,
probably if you don't
yeah,
adjust any data and just put a couple of numbers in. But I
right.
mean, you're going to get invalid initially because you haven't set judgments. But then
Yeah,
when
let's
you,
go there.
yeah, so set,
Show the back.
yeah, well, set the growth judgments. Well, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and then we don't have to go
I'll
back.
set both growth judgments, and I'll set them really small.
Sure,
So
whatever.
I'm going to say 2 and 2. Poor Microsoft, not going to
Oh
make any
man,
money.
no credit. All right. Anyway,
Okay, now we're going to go to the evaluation and return page, and we see invalid. So
right.
this is a case where you see it, as Ann mentioned, because you don't have any judgments.
Yeah, so you have to complete the judgments, but that's probably not your real question. More than likely, it's after you have entered your judgments and you might still be getting an invalid. So Susie's going to try to put in something here that's going to drive an invalid. And I'll just, to sum it up, the reason that you're getting invalid is because the current price does not fall within your defined high and low
Right.
price. Your forecasted, I should say, high and low price. So if the current price falls outside those boundaries that you've just set, you're going to get an invalid
Right.
indicator.
So here I have all of my judgments made. I made a really conservative earnings judgment. So it says earnings aren't going to grow very much. Right now the earnings are at 1.47. They're only going to grow to 1.62. My PE is super low, super conservative, and we think that's great. Unfortunately, that calculates out to a price of $30.8 in the future. And guess what? The current price,
It's
let me
up
go up
near
here.
90 or 100 or something.
Right. It's 93.
Okay.
So super conservative isn't good. It really, the invalid is going to say to you, you have to revisit your study. You're missing something, and it's either you're missing a judgment, or as Ann said, in this zoning,
You know, it's
it
helpful
doesn't
there
even work.
well, it's helpful to click on that because you're going to see a chart that doesn't make any sense. It's showing at the very top there, see where it's labeled current price?
Yeah.
And it's way outside your very squashed little zones there.
Right. Here's
So
your zone.
this is an
Yes,
extreme example she just went through.
I
But
did.
but that's a really good hint. If you're not sure exactly what's happening, and yours probably won't be that extreme, click on that um, button. Can you scroll down just to show them how you got
I'm
that graph
sorry.
again?
I'm
Yeah,
scrolling, and you might see it as this, but blue button means clickable, gain loss chart, and there we go.
right. And that will give you a clue whether, you know, your low is not low enough or your high is not high enough. So, but what it means is the current price is not inside the bounds that you have set or defined with your forecast high and low prices.
Right.
Also, in all the, I mean, that's it. But I made that little segment last probably 15 minutes in a ticker talk where we went into it in excruciating detail in the April 2017 ticker talk. So you can go and take a look at that if you'd like more
Right.
information.
Okay.
All
Great.
right, that was that one.
Okay, I'm going to revisit this question about, hey, stock comparison guide, great, but I can't get to it. You know what? When you're here inside your study, it's all about being in your study. And if I want to use that Microsoft study in my stock comparison guide, I would need to save it so that I can come back and pick it, because the stock comparison guide is over here. These are our major tools: home, our studies, a screener, and stock ideas. The green indicates what we're on, and that's the stock selection guide. And here's the stock comparison guide, where I can pick from studies that I have, or I can enter a new one, like Expedia, and it's not yet saved. So that's how you get to stock comparison guide. And here's that share button that I talked about.
And you might want to remind people that they can also, I know this is not his question because he asked from his study page, but you can also go into your comparison right from the green box on the Better Investing homepage.
Yes.
Those pages.
We didn't actually show that, but that actually speaks to one of our questions that we get a lot in home office. Probably not for a lot of our users here tonight because most of you users are familiar, but our number one question that we get that's outside of how do I renew and things like that is how do I access? So if you log into the Better Investing website, this is the number one way that people access. You can go to My Studies. You can start a stock selection guide directly. You can compare stocks and click here. You can research company data. This is not used terribly often, but these top two methods, I'll tell you what I do, and probably drives Ann crazy, because I just do ssg.betterinvesting.org. That's all you need. That's it. It should be easy to remember. And I come right here. If I need to log in, it'll ask me to log in. So I come right into the tool, and then I can go to My Studies. So those are a couple different ways to ask it.
There's multiple ways to get to any web page. We know this. It's just not the same as the way I would do it. So
right.
That's fine. Could you review that where that maybe you already did this when I was doing something else. Did you review where to find that refresh all studies icon? Because we have some
yeah. Right, so what you need to do is open this portfolios panel and look for the all studies portfolio. Everyone has one. I'm going to switch off of this so you can maybe see it a little better, and I'll blow it up. Everybody has this all studies portfolio. Everybody has the studies not in a portfolio. These two lines are there out of the gate. So in this all studies, you don't even have to click on it really. You just click on the refresh all studies icon, and that brings up the, hey, remember I said if you had a lot of studies it might warn you? Well, this is the warning. You have 743. It might take some time. And I'm going to cancel to make me not update all those.
Good choice. You have a lot of study. Or you might be using a test account tonight. I'm not sure. But...
No, this is me.
Oh,
this is me for real.
Good choice.
All right. Actually, there's a great question here. On the front side of the SSG, my graph blocks the management information at the bottom of the page.
Ooh. Elizabeth, thank you. We can talk about another feature.
I was going to come at this a different way.
Oh, all right. Sorry.
So what I'm hearing is, so the number one way is you would scroll down to see the management information. Ann is going to wants me to talk about, I can collapse this panel, and then the management information can, both of these are collapsible panels. So that might help you see it. But I'm also going to talk about another thing that happens when people have their fonts set really large. And I'm not sure if this is exactly what our attendee is talking about, but your display can get a little whacked out if you set your fonts too large. So there's an FAQ on this, and we can fix that for you. I'm going to suggest that if you have trouble seeing, you hit the Control and plus button and zoom your browser so you can see a little better. So not sure exactly what case we're talking about, then that might be impacting you, but if you have another question or need more information, let me know. We have, what else? Portfolio questions.
Yeah, there's a couple, and they're both very similar. So
I'm going to talk about another attendee's question about when we looked at this panel here.
Yeah. Good.
Came up. Well, Okay, this is great. Here's my PEs. It came up when we were talking about PEs. What is high A/C? This is not code. This is actually probably time for us to let it go. This is a legacy of the old paper form when we told you how to calculate. This is column A and this is column C. The price to earnings ratio is column A divided by column C. That's all it's telling us, is how to calculate this.
Right. We could probably
Okay.
let that go. I don't think anybody would miss it, and then people wouldn't be confused. But it is just the
Right.
equation. I mean, it's a little bit useful when you're looking at payout and high yield, but you do have to know that those are column indicators to be able to decipher what the code is.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a question here about updating locked data again. So if we go to the data panel and lock a particular row like this, oh shoot, don't want to use this. I'm going to go to something I just created rather than a real account. So I'm going to go to the data panel. I'm going to fix, wow, that's quarterly pound. So I'm going to change something here. Whoops. And it's going to lock this data. And so when I do that, that data is locked. And if I went to data and then refresh it, it's going to say study contains locked data. And I am not going to, it's not going to get touched. When we update all studies, locked data does not get touched in a similar manner. And there's actually no way to override it and say, forget it, do it anyway. Locked data just doesn't get touched. Okay. Oh, we got a lot of comments about leaving in the calculations.
Yeah, I see that.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, actually.
I mean, they are good teaching tools, especially for beginners to understand. So we will take all those comments into consideration.
Right.
What else do you have
Okay. Oh,
besides the portfolio? You're waiting on those, I can tell.
I am, because does the online SSG ever bring in non-GAAP financial data? No. Great question. Morningstar data that is provided to us in our equity data feed is all GAAP data. So simple answer to what can be a complex question. If the data that is brought in as estimated is not based on GAAP. Analyst estimates are what analyst estimates are. We don't have any further definition than these are a consensus and they're either 2-year or long-term. And what you should view them as is a general reference. So I wouldn't get too worried about whether they're estimating exactly against GAAP or adjusted or non-GAAP. Just take them as a general reference going forward. Okay.
I'm going to just say right now, I don't understand Janet's question. Maybe you do, but I'll read it, and Janet, maybe you can provide clarification. She says, my pre-tax and debt boxes, etc., do not have colored. Oh, I know what she's talking about. Yeah. Trend lines. The colored in trend lines like yours does. Why not? Okay, got it.
Here's how you fix that. Preferences. Go to Tools and then Preferences, and select Trend Display to be Graph. If they're set at text, you're going to see up, down, like this. So, Janet, I'm gonna guess that you are a longtime tools user because I think we've preset those for new users to the graph, but that's how you change it.
I don't think we do. I think the default is text.
Well, let's change that.
Okay, it's fine by me, but I think.
All right, moving on. I thought there were some cases where Morningstar modifies GAAP data. No, no, I can't really think about that.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. So Craig, email member services if you have a specific case or if you remember something else on that, and we can sort it out. Okay, portfolio. Oh, great reminder from Virginia that when we look at analyst estimates, that consensus means average in this case. So these are analyst average estimates. It's tradition, and it is the name that they call them ACE or consensus estimates, but it really is an average of many analysts. So good there. Value line data. Value line data compared to Morningstar data. Morningstar is gap data. Value line can be anything. You must do your own research. We have seen all gap data for a company. We have seen all adjusted data. And more alarming, we have seen a mix of data within their reports. And sometimes they are not noted in the footnotes. So make sure that you know what you're looking at. If you're going to look at data provided on a value line sheet. Okay, when companies merge, is there a source for pro forma of the data of the two for years before the merge? Whatever is available will be through the filings with the SEC, and you can get there by going to research and filings and transcripts and all. And it will bring you right to that company and all of their filings, where you can filter by a specific filing type if you'd like. So in terms of a new company or merged company, there will generally be information that is reported on a ad hoc pro forma basis, meaning not official, to give investors and to give analysts, more importantly, a reference point. So you can be your own analyst and look at the same data that is available to others. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about portfolios, because the question is, can I move a company from one to another? And you can. So let's say I have a company, it's a step-by-step process. Let's say I have a company that's associated with my club and I want to add it to my test portfolio. Essentially, I'm just going to edit my test portfolio and add, let's say that booking, and click on the box and save it there. And then I would go to my club, and actually how you get rid of it out of your other portfolio is click on the portfolio, and I'm just going to delete it out of this, and it will warn you, don't be alarmed. It says, I'm just going to remove it from the portfolio. I'm not going to delete it permanently. So that's how I would accomplish that. And if I want to update all companies in that portfolio, I click on Refresh Portfolio. You get the same kind of options, data and prices or prices only. If I want to run a report on that portfolio, I click on that report button. So that would be my recommendation. If you have a large group of stocks that makes sense to help portfolio, one reason to do them is to do reports, but another reason to create portfolios is to make it easier on you to group things.
And so related to that is, what if you wanted to move a company from one portfolio to another?
So I would do the thing I just talked about. We'll go to here, and let's say I want to move my IPGP study to Suzy Test. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to add it. And save it. And then I'm going to go to the other portfolio and remove it from there. So I'm going to find it in my Cash 22 portfolio and delete it out of there.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't delete it.
No, I was
permanently.
Just like, don't do it. I know, right. We should.
I can add it back.
Right.
I can add it back. Right. So unfortunately, no drag and drop. And I'll tell you guys that if this is of interest to you, this is an area that I'm totally willing to consider other methods of getting portfolio functions done. It's actually not done very often in the website world. So without getting too complex, you know, we looked at many, many models about how to manage portfolios online, and it's not as simple as like moving files around on your computer. Okay, great question from Fred about sending studies to somebody else. So when we want to send a study, an individual study to somebody else, what we can do is go to File and share the study. And then you can send it in a number of different formats. Online only, you can send it ITK file or an SSG file. I'll tell you guys, the SSG file is going to end up going away. We just talked about this. This option is going to go away. There's not a lot of usage for it, and it doesn't contain all of the interesting critical data like notes. So the difference here is ITK is proprietary, and it's much richer, but it's meant to be used, proprietary is the wrong word, it's much richer, and it's meant to be imported into Investor's Toolkit. SSG is a much more basic set of data, and it leaves stuff out, but it was used for some much older programs. So when we launched the tools, we had this option, and you know, I know this is supposed to be about features, but this is one that it is confusing, and so the SSG option is going to end up going away. Well, we have a ton of questions, and I'm willing to hang out as long as the rest of you are. I do want to, for those of you who want to get back to your ball games here, I'm going to go to, if you need more information, go to, there's a help tab. You can find a ton of information here. We had some questions about, we didn't actually get too many about how to do things, so I'm going to skip over much of this. Just know that there's a help tab. Feature requests. If you have a feature request, here's the place to log it. We do look over them. There are kind of a ton out there. We have to combine some, but we definitely do look at this. And we have an FAQ site, again, available off this help and information tab. But here's the email. If you got something specific and you want to email into us, please hit this. And then I'm going to go back, and as long as people want to hang around a few more minutes, we can hit some more questions. Okay? Good.
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
We still have a few people here in the audience, more than a
Excellent.
few. Yes.
All right. So can I group a series of stocks within a sector or do a sector comparison? Well, that's a great question. And what I'm going to suggest, if you want to do a sector, I'm going to kind of reset my display here. If you want to look at stocks in a particular sector, I would start here with Stock Ideas, which is our screening tool. Pick your sector and then narrow it down as much as you can. We've got a number of different things for you to get those ideas. I'm going to we do have the Morningstar growth grade, so let's say financial health is better than C. I'm just going to see how many we get here. 17. So these are all large consumer cyclical companies with pre-tax profit trends and return on equity trends that are up with a financial health grade greater than C. Then I'm going to have you do this function of previewing the data. And this is a way of really quickly going through and getting rid of ideas. So this is Amazon, that's their SSG chart. Aramark, so if you see something you don't have any interest in just from the visual analysis, either, you know, depending on how you think about this, include it or exclude it as you go along. Now, let's talk about, I'm going to open Amazon. I'm going to click right through. That's going to open Amazon. I can do two things. I can start a study and add judgments to it. Or I can just leave it and go directly to the comparison guide. So I'm not even going to save it. I'm going to abandon. I can actually start right here with companies out of the same sector with nothing completed on them. But I'm going to have to know them. So this is a, you know, it's not going to populate with the top. That might be a great feature idea, but you got to know your company. So I'm going to go from a cloud kind of concept. Google, Microsoft, Maybe Rackspace. Does that company even exist anymore? Nope. Facebook. And one thing I want you to know here, we do have industry averages. So this will list the industry here. If you scroll on down to the bottom, it will tell you the sector and industry. So most of these are technology. Amazon, interestingly enough, is still a consumer cyclical and specialty retail company, even though a lot of their profits come from the cloud and technology piece. So you get that information here, and you can figure out, this shows the 3 industries that are represented. So we've got 1 specialty retail, 1 internet content and information, another software infrastructure, and a second in the internet content and information. So I can pick that, and this will show me the industry averages. And they apply to Alphabet and Facebook, and so we can see, you know, are they better or worse than the industry average? So that's about the nut of what we have for supporting sector-specific research. If you have suggestions about how to get closer to the problem that you want to solve, write in or send it, input something on the feedback forum there. Okay.
Could you review, because you went quickly, to the screening area? So if you could show again how we get to that area, those fancy little tabs.
Exactly, these fancy little tabs on the left, and if you mouse over them, many times we put what they do, so stock ideas, another word for screening. But we have more than just, here's a screen that you can set your own criteria, and it's not large. In a lot of cases, it's enough. Here are some predefined screens and what they mean, what goes into them. And there's also an idea of the ticker heat map. This is actually one of our most asked questions, is how do you get to this ticker heat map? And it's through the stock ideas or screening tab. And I think one of the questions that we're asking is, how do you get to stock prospector? Well, we have actually it's iClub, our subsidiaries product is called My Stock Prospector. If you've been around for Better Investing a while, you might remember an old desktop product called Stock Prospector. You bought it, you came to your door in a DVD, and you loaded it on your computer. Then once a week, you got updated data for it. That's been replaced. That is no longer sold or supported, but all of the functionality in that older product is now in an online product called My Stock Prospector. If you need more than what we're giving you here, we're going to recommend that you go to My Stock Prospector, whole separate website. It's a separate fee. It's got tons and tons of data in it, but that's how you get to it. Okay?
Okay, here's a timely question. And this person, Bonnie, is saying that she's being driven crazy by the difficult issue with the quarterly data changes and the taxes, especially, and having a difficult time knowing if she's getting it right. It is crazy, Bonnie. I agree. Any tips?
And do you have a company that you demonstrated this on?
Google.
And I'll bring it. All right.
Google was what I featured. I talked about this in the January and the February Ticker Talk. And I know it doesn't have all the answers in there, but I did kind of go through a step-by-step example of how to figure out what the, quote, right number should be, or close. I mean, you know, it doesn't have to be to the penny. Don't worry about that, but you're going to get it close. They give you a lot of information. I don't remember what the numbers are. If you're wanting me to tell you that, we'd have to go to the tape. But you know, you do that. I think you know through your question. You're not asking how, but just going into the data as Susie showed before about changing the data, locking the data, all of that. But figuring out what the data to put in there is a little bit of the challenge. I did go through that kind of step by step for Google in February. That's the February one. So take a look at that and you might find that helpful. Any
Well,
more
she
words of
says she
wisdom?
did to the Ticker Talk. They were excellent, but some of the other companies aren't that simple.
Oh, I know. I
I'm
picked a simple
paraphrasing.
one. Yeah,
Okay, so
true.
let me take a stab at this because Anne is always accurate and very detailed. I'm going to ask you to read the company filing and see if it makes sense. And as your first pass, use their adjusted data with a warning. So this is just me talking. But
No,
my
it's
warning is
very valid, and I should
my
have put that
warning
back.
is
Yeah.
if this company looks like they adjust all the dang time, you got a more difficult problem in front of you. But if we're looking to solve the problem of this last quarter totally messing up your SSG, just toss their adjusted data in there and see. And then just let it go. I'll tell you, I did a number of studies between using GAAP data and adjusted data. And if I substituted everything with adjusted, non-GAAP data and compared it to the GAAP data, in companies that do this consistently, in a lot of cases, the growth rates were just about the same. It really led me to believe I need to stop stressing about GAAP data versus adjusted data. But there are times like this one where it's going to mess you up because you're going to project from a point that's really low. So throw their number in and see how it looks.
Right. And I thought of that, and I can be detailed to my own detriment. I admit this. So yeah, use those numbers that they're putting in their press release and just see how that works out. She's also asking about Starbucks, and we both happen to know that Starbucks is a complicated one because not only do they have taxes, but they sold a piece of a company. So yeah,
right.
it's I
So
don't know what.
Starbucks had,
Yeah,
we used to get all kinds of issues about this guy, and this was
that's
where
old
they
news.
paid Kraft billions of dollars.
Right.
And you can adjust that out. And then we've got, it's a positive tax benefit, right?
Did they? The tax benefit is not the big deal there.
No, right. The earnings is the Tivana,
Mostly
right?
it's due to the sale of a piece of their pie, and
Okay.
that's what happened there. So it's complicated.
Can we do Starbucks?
Yeah,
so here's
probably
we've
not
talked
in the
internally. I would love to have this community notes feature in.
Oh, I
so
know.
I'm going to call you out publicly where we can tell you what our numbers
call
might
me
be.
out. I never said no. I like that community notes idea.
Okay.
There was something else I didn't like, but yeah, community notes is great where we can kind of share and
we can tell you these things that somebody has already thought through.
Right.
So, I'm sorry that you have to go through Starbucks.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, so I have an interesting question here from Christina. How do the updates compare to Toolkit 6, and what else is needed to make them equal? Toolkit 6, the big differences there are it's an installed product that does not need the internet all the time. And people like that. There can be speed differences in that if you're not connecting to the internet, you can move around your product a little bit easier. Having said that, most people are connected to the internet, and to get data into Toolkit, very few people add it manually. So, but desktop versus online is one of the biggest differences. Toolkit functionality from what can happen here as Toolkit versus SSGPlus is very, very comparable, with SSGPlus having some pretty big pros in peer data, a lot of automatic things that we do here. Quarterly data is better. Stock comparison guide is better. There are reports that Toolkit has that we don't yet have here in the online version. We can do those over the air updates. Toolkit installs and updates are always a hassle. So knowing that, I mean, our long-term plan is to put our efforts into updates here in the online world. Toolkit is still sold, it's still supported. We do minor bug fixes, but the feature updates are here in the online tools. All right, anything else that
There was a
people...
question here. I don't oh yeah, this one. It's easy. Maybe you've talked about it, but Al's asking, and he's still here, so we should answer it.
Mhm.
Is there a problem with an equity residing in multiple portfolios?
Not at all. I do it all the time. So for example,
Right.
I added in this test portfolio, I have booking and IPGP. I'm going to add them right back into my club account. And I'm going to add IPGP and add that in. And there is no problem. If you have an equity or a study in two different portfolios, you can have two different stock amounts or number of shares, so that's no problem. If you make updates, it will impact both portfolios though. If you make data updates or judgment updates, it's going to impact both portfolios, but there's absolutely no architectural technology problem with them existing in multiple portfolios. Okay, ETFs. We
Yeah.
do not support ETFs. We just don't have the data. And they're not really suitable for a stock selection guide.
Right.
So
we're getting into repetition and we're kind of out of time. Wait, what is this big long one that
yes,
just came in?
right. When reviewing the online PERT for the pre-tax profit rate of growth, it appears the PTP growth rate is compared to earnings. So, okay, this is a more advanced user.
Yeah.
A PERT is one of our portfolio reports. So let me bring up our portfolio report, and I'm going to click on PERT. Now, this is a really complex, busy report, and there are pink marks on here. And so what the attendee is referring to is the percent change in pre-tax profit is pink because it's being compared to our earnings judgment rate and falling short. So it's not compared to our earnings rate. Oh yeah, it's compared to our earnings growth rate estimate.
Right.
And that is, we didn't change how this worked. So we just kind of report, here's what we expected for Gentex. We expected 9 and it's coming up at 7.1. So the pink is a little red flag. And the observation is sometimes the earnings estimate, like 9, for some companies is substantially different than the pre-tax profit rate, and it appears there is a problem and there may not be a problem. Oh, okay, so there's a misunderstanding here. This 7.1% is a percent change from quarter over quarter, and this is the percent change we're looking for in growth rate. So it's not that this company, Gentex, has a 7% pre-tax profit margin. It's that the actual pre-tax profit they earned went from 129 to 138 in the span of 12 months. That's a 7% difference. But we have said, in general, we expect our earnings to grow at 9%. So this is not the pre-tax profit rate. This is the percent change in the number. So two different concepts here. And he's right. Sometimes the earnings estimate at 9 is much lower than a company that might be producing a 23% pre-tax profit rate on, pre-tax, pre-tax income as compared to sales. So hopefully I didn't muck that up too badly.
No, yeah. It's just the
Okay.
growth of the pre-tax profit line, that pink line that is on our SSG, that's what we're measuring there. That's not a margin, as you said. It's growth of pre-tax profit. And there can be reasons why pre-tax profit grows slower or faster than earnings per share, most of which have to do with taxes and number of shares outstanding.
Right. Okay. So we have a volunteer in the background, so we know who our next helper in our presentation is here. So Nick brings up a number of good points when I've talked about a number of things. Remember how I talked about how to get to these tools? And you can go through the homepage. I type in ssg.betterinvesting.org. Nick bookmarks it. Great idea. Just bookmark it up at the top and put it in your toolbar. So how to get to stock ideas. Again, on the left-hand side are all the different tools. So I'm on the green, which is my studies, which is what you see here. And to get to stock ideas, it's a magnifying glass. And then it'll turn green and you get this other display.
Right, those are very handy and often overlooked by people, those little tabs, and very powerful to get you to move around to the various areas.
Right. Okay. We had a question about GE, and I have answered many, many questions about this company because what'll happen is it's widely owned. Clubs own it. They've owned it forever, and they look at this and they cannot get anything reasonable out of it. Well, it's really hard. You can't, in fact, project from a negative number. So when your last year is negative, it doesn't work. So right there we have a problem in the mechanics of how an SSG does the calculations. We have a general problem for a company like GE that continues to decline, and they're, irrespective of anything else, they have divested operations for many, many years. So their sales are going down as they've divested these things. Well, they've happened to have a little bit of sales increase in this span of time between 09 and 14, but we rely on the fact that companies are growing sales, which drives earnings, and these earnings are used in our calculation. The guts of the SSG is valuing this company by projecting what the earnings are going to be out in the future times what the traditional high price has been. So when you have a company with PEs that are all over the place, that's a problem. When you have a company that projects lower earnings than the earnings we have now, you're not going to get any growth. And the whole algorithm starts to fall apart. There might be, do your own research, the different way that you want to value this company, but that is not the stock selection guide. So I want to bring up a company that I have worked on, and that is IPGP. I might have mentioned I follow it from my club. Looks great, right? It's a beautiful company because right now they report all kinds of good things. It's hard to do a stock selection guide on because the PEs are not consistent. They have grown in this last year from around 26 up to 34. And what do you do with that? Well, for our club, we're going to sit tight because the growth rates going forward are lower than they were. They just had a spectacular last year. But my comment to Ann was, it's hard to do an SSG on this company. I just need to sit tight and wait. So in this case, I'm pretty confident that, and again, do your own research. This is just an example. I'm confident in waiting because I think this company is going to continue to grow. I might have a different, after I did my research, I might have a different opinion about a company like GE. So that's all I have to say about that. Any more questions?
I'm pretty much cleaned up here. I've been watching things, and we still do have a number of people that like us more than March Madness.
Oh,
or maybe this is March Madness.
They can catch, right? We should have badged it separately. Well, I appreciate everyone hanging on here to the end of the presentation. I hope it brought something interesting to you. If you have additional questions, please write in to us here at service@betterinvesting.org. And I thank you so much for your precious time tonight. And thank you to our backroom staff who makes all things possible. I'm going to wish you good night.